It was the year 1933, and Germany was about to face one of the darkest periods in history. Adolf Hitler, leader of the Nazi political party, was elected Chancellor of Germany. His belief in anti-Semitism led to the passing of the Nuremberg Laws, which deprived Jews of their citizenship and ruled marriages between Jews and non-Jews as illegal. But this was only the beginning.
Since the Treaty of Versailles was signed in 1919, there have been only a few really momentous days in the history of Europe. Mussolini marching on Rome, Stalin launching his first five-year plan, Hitler breaking the bonds of Versailles one by one.
On November 7th, 1938, a 17-year-old Jew named Herschel Grynszpan shot a German diplomat in Paris by the name of Ernst von Rath. Grynszpan was angry at the Nazis for deporting his father to Poland after living in Germany for 27 years. To avenge his father and the other 12,000 Jews suffering at the Nazis' hands, he went to Rath's office claiming he had a most important document. When the door was closed and Rath asked for the document, Grynszpan shot him 5 times in the abdomen. News of the assassination reached the ears of the Nazis. They used it as an excuse to carry out pogroms, organized acts of violence, against the Jewish communities in Germany.
Meine Arbeit für richtig hältst, ob du glaubst, dass ich fleißig gewesen bin, dass ich gearbeitet habe, dass ich mich in diesen Jahren für dich eingesetzt habe, dass ich anständig meine Zeit verwendet habe im Dienste meines Volkes. Gib du jetzt deine Stimme ab. Wenn ja, dann tritt für mich ein, so wie ich für dich eingetreten bin.
The night of November 9th was the first mass persecution of the Jews, infamously known as the Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass. Nazi stormtroopers attacked Jewish homes, businesses, and synagogues, murdering up to 100 Jews. The rest were dragged to labor camps to work as slaves. In the end, Hitler's final solution to getting rid of the Jews was by mass execution, which affected millions of innocent people. Some groups were shot in holes, while many others were killed in slower, crueler ways. A crafty means of doing this was by putting Jewish prisoners in concentration camps. Betty Cohen was born in Amsterdam, 1921, where she lived with her parents and 2 older siblings. She recalls the rise of Nazi power and growing tension in the Jewish community, reflecting on the moment when she realized that her life would never be the same. Her uncle was caught in an attempt to hide some of his paintings. The Nazis had him arrested and sent him to a death camp from which he would never return. After Betty's family went into hiding, the Gestapo tracked them down, separating them and sending them to different concentration camps. Betty would never see her mother, father, or siblings again. Concentration camps and extermination camps were the closest thing to hell for all the Jews imprisoned there. Jews, however, weren't the only ones subjected to this type of torture. Other minorities, such as Roma, mentally ill, homosexuals, physically disabled, and elderly, along with political enemies, were targeted in Hitler's vision to reach Aryan purity. In the concentration camps, prisoners were treated with the utmost cruelty and were forced to work past human limits. Failing to meet expectations could mean death. Food rations were barely scraps, and many dropped dead from starvation, but extermination camps were worse. They were used for the sole purpose of Jewish elimination. Auschwitz, the largest of the extermination camps used by the Nazis, held enough gas chambers to kill up to 6,000 people a day.
German doctors would separate the weak and unstable from the strong and healthy.
Dr. Mengele, a German physician, was responsible for this task. People referred to him as the Angel of Death on account of his inhumane treatment toward them. He also ran a series of experiments on Jews, particularly fraternal twins, in the hope of tracing origins of disease and weighing the factors of human heredity and environment. They would then take the weak ones and lock them up in the gas chambers. The prisoners were always unaware that they were about to die until too late, because the doctors tricked them into thinking they were being led to showers.
Betty remembers stepping off a cattle train with several other prisoners and being led to the showers, unsure if they intended to kill her or not. Once the prisoners were locked in, cyanide gas would pour through the fake shower heads and kill the people trapped inside within only a few minutes. Betty was not to die that day. She was considered physically able and therefore was spared the fate of so many others. Later on, as she was leaving the barracks to use the toilet, she could smell the unforgettable stench of burning human flesh.
And then on the end, there was a Nazi and an SS man and a Gestapo man standing, and he was separating us. We got our first tattoo. No more name. We had to remember the number. Our number. The first number was 5288. And from there, we went into our cabins, which was called blocks. At night, you had to go outside if you had to go to the bathroom. And as I walked out, there was a brick building there, but there was fire till the ceiling. And it was so smelly. And the smell was a foul smell and all that fire. And I was standing there like in awe, you know, looking at it. And the guard who was outside kept saying, "Did you come with your family today?" And I said, "Yeah, sure," as much as I could understand him. He says, "Well, you better say goodbye." And say goodbye because they came from the gas chambers and now they're being cremated. So I broke down, of course. That was what my dad meant. I won't see them anymore.
After gassing the Jews, the Nazis would burn the bodies in crematoriums or ovens, wiping away their very existence completely. The few Jews who survived these horrors were changed forever by what they'd experienced. Eli Wiesel, one of the survivors, puts it as such.
Never shall I forget the small faces of the children whose bodies I saw transformed to smoke under the silent sky. Never shall I forget those flames that consumed my faith forever. Never shall I forget those moments that murdered my God and my soul and turned my dreams to ashes. Never.
Despite the destructive impact of the Holocaust, there were some who defied the Third Reich and helped protect the Jews. One of these heroes was a Polish social worker named Irena Sendler. Born on February 15, 1910, Irena Sendler was a member of an underground organization called the Zegota, a group dedicated to the recovery and protection of segregated Jews who were imprisoned in the Warsaw Ghetto. Ghettos were closed-off Jewish communities used for the sole purpose of genocide, the elimination of another race. Living conditions were horrible in the infamous Warsaw Ghetto, where up to 500,000 Jews were held against their will. There were about 7.2 people who lived in a room together at a time, and the Jews received little food. Some were dying of starvation or disease. If any were caught escaping, they would be killed immediately. As early as 1939, when the Germans invaded Warsaw, Irena Sendler had already begun ministering to the Jews. She was in charge of the children's division of Zegota, so it was her responsibility to help smuggle all the Jewish children from the ghetto. Sendler and several other women were assigned by the Nazis to treat the prisoners inside the Warsaw Ghetto. Using this to their advantage, they managed to sneak in food, medicine, and clothing to the suffering Jews within the walls.
Irena Sendler and the 10 others who went into the ghetto used several different methods to help get the children out. One way they did it was they hid a child underneath a stretcher and then used an ambulance to get them out. They might also have had them escape through the courthouse, through the secret passages underneath the ghetto, or put several children into a bag and rolled them out by cart.
Irena and the others made sure that each Jewish family hiding children understood that their children must be returned to Jewish relatives after the war. Unfortunately, rescuing hundreds of children from the Warsaw Ghetto came at a terrible price for Sendler. On October 20th, 1943, she was arrested by the Gestapo, the Nazi police force, and locked up in the Piawiak prison. There she was constantly interrogated and tortured. Even when her legs and feet were fractured, she refused to give in to them. She even dared to provide them with false information, which had been a Zagota plan ahead of time in the event that any of its members were captured.
The man who interrogated her spoke fluent Polish, and he wanted her to give the names and addresses of all the other Zagota members. He also wanted her to give the names of anyone even remotely involved, even if they weren't part of the Zagota. But she still didn't tell them. She still didn't give in.
After her interrogation, Irina Sendler was scheduled to be shot by the Gestapo. But the day before her execution, she was released on account of the Zagota bribing the executioner to set her free. To avoid the possibility of stirring unrest, the Nazis publicly proclaimed her death the next day, nailing up posters with the news of her execution.
Irina stayed in hiding during the rest of the war, but after the war was over, she resumed her mission to safely restore the children she had saved to their proper families. Sadly, most of the children's parents had died in the Treblinka death camp.
Despite the horrors inflicted upon the Jews during the Holocaust, some still fought back. In April 1943, a remainder of the surviving Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto revolted and formed a revolutionary group before establishing hiding places. They fought a series of battles against their German captors, and the Germans gave up in the end. The fight repeated itself again and again until May 16th, when the Jews ran out of ammunition and were forced to surrender. 7,000 were shot and another 7,000 were transferred to the Treblinka death camp. Unknown to the Nazis, however, rebellion was also stirring within the barracks of Treblinka as well as Warsaw. An underground organization formed, and after a long period of secret preparation, the Jewish prisoners finally found their chance. 700 Jews snuck into an arsenal and stole weapons before sneaking them to a gravel work detail. They proceeded to lead an insurgency that lasted for 30 minutes, but only half of the escapees made it out alive. Later, a Polish division of troops arrived to get the survivors to safety. Of those who escaped, 70 are known to have survived until the end of the war. We look back on these times and mourn the sufferings of the millions who perished on account of the inhuman cruelty they underwent in the Nazi prison camps. They allow us to reflect upon the great evils humanity is capable of, and how we might avoid such tragedies in the future. Betty Cohen is now celebrating her 100th birthday surrounded by family and friends. Since her liberation, she has spoken out about her awful experiences in an attempt to educate the new generation about the flaws and pitfalls of human nature and the precious few who can make a difference. Let us never forget.
97 years old, an old lady. I have 5 grandchildren, but they're married, so I have 8 grandchildren, and I have 5 great-grandchildren. Don't forget to say goodbye to your loved ones wherever you go. I know I was young one time. I walked out of the house sometimes mad at my mom, you know, but you don't forget to say goodbye, because you never know what happened. Something can happen to you, to your family. So that is my saying all the time. Say goodbye to all your loved ones whenever you can. And tell them you love them, because it never hurts to say I love you, you know? And that's it. Okay.